I ran into my college roommate years after graduation. I never expected to see Emma again. Years had passed since college, since the heartbreak that had left me reeling, and yet here she was, my new boss. The same straight girl who had rejected me so many years ago now commanded the office with a quiet authority, and I was still that same person who secretly held a crush on her. We acknowledged each other only with polite nods, silently agreeing to pretend our shared past didn't exist. But old habits die hard, and late one night, when she overheard my mother on the phone, urging me to go on a blind date, something in her shifted. Suddenly, she had me pressed against a desk, her usual composure unraveling. "Why don't you consider me instead?" she asked. I froze. Wait, wasn't she straight? My mind tumbled back to college, to the first time my heart truly shattered. Emma and I had been roommates, inseparable in ways that felt fated. We ate together, attended classes together, and shared the kind of conversations that made it impossible to imagine life apart. She was brilliant, beautiful, reserved. I was loud, a little reckless, always stepping too close before I realized the truth. The truth was I wasn't straight. I understood that in a single, dizzying moment, though I spent 3 years chasing Emma anyway. At first it was subtle, secret crushes and stolen glances, but eventually my feelings became glaringly obvious. Then came that night, the confession that changed everything. The dorm room was bathed in the soft glow of our desk lamps. My hands trembled as I poured my heart out. She listened with a patient, gentle smile before saying, softly, "I'm sorry. I'm straight." We tried to remain friends, but friendship could never replace what I felt. Mood swings, arguments, silent treatments, they piled up until graduation, when we parted ways completely. Not a single photograph to commemorate our final days together. I carried that obsession with me for years, letting it haunt my dreams, until fate decided to toy with me once more. Emma reappeared as my boss. My universe, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Years had polished her beauty even further, and her demeanor, always so cool, was sharper than ever. I tried to keep my head down, avoid drawing attention, but she called me out anyway. "Joy, as a senior employee, please help Director Thompson get familiar with the company." Her eyes met mine, and I felt a flutter of panic. She was pretending not to know me, and I wasn't going to embarrass myself. I plastered on a professional smile. Of course. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of departmental tours and polite conversation. Emma responded minimally, her attention elsewhere, and eventually returned to her office, while I resumed my desk duties. Our reunion was uneventful, strictly professional, but my mind refused to let go. Dinner with Molly later only made it worse. I glanced toward Emma's office as we left, catching her still at her desk. The briefest moment of eye contact left me irrationally worried about her hunger, her long hours, everything. Molly noticed my distraction. "Honey, you're acting weird today." I snapped back to reality. "No, I'm fine."
Molly didn't buy it.
Your face changed the moment the new director was announced. Anyone would be upset about an outsider stepping in. I shook my head. Emma is competent. Extremely competent. She'll take the department to new heights. Dinner passed quickly. I even ordered the signature fish to go, though Molly looked bewildered. "You liked it that much? You barely touched yours." "I'm tired," I muttered, dodging the question. "I'll just take it to the office." The drive home took a detour. My destination wasn't home. It was Emma's office. I parked, hesitated, then took the elevator up, nerves coiling in my stomach. Only her office lights burned. I knocked. Emma looked up, surprise flickering across her features. "Some unfinished work." I lied awkwardly. She nodded, strictly professional. "Working hard, I see." I held up the takeout box. "Molly says this place has amazing fish. I thought you might like some." She studied me for a long moment before simply saying, "Thank you. That's thoughtful." Relieved, I turned to heat the food, but the scent of her perfume made my heart skip. She followed, entering the break room. As she awkwardly tried to remove the fish bones with her chopsticks, I sighed inwardly, seating myself across from her. "Actually, I'm still a little hungry. Mind if I have some?" I didn't take a bite. Instead, I carefully removed every bone and placed the clean fish in a small bowl in front of her. It was a motion so familiar it felt instinctive. Our unspoken ritual from college, countless nights of doing this for her, was alive again, even if neither of us acknowledged it. We sat there quietly, the past and present colliding in the simplest act of care, and I realized we were nothing to each other now, yet I still couldn't stop wanting to be near her. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap at the slightest movement. Emma ate the deboned fish methodically, each bite deliberate, while I pretended to check my phone. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in harsh reality. "You still do that," she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart stuttered. "Do what?" "Pick out the bones." Her chopsticks paused midair. "You always hated watching me struggle with them." The acknowledgement hung in the air like a confession. So she did remember. Every late-night study session, every shared meal in our cramped dorm room, every small act of care I'd disguised as casual friendship. Old habits, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Emma nodded, but something had shifted in her expression. The professional mask slipped, revealing a flicker of the girl I'd known. Vulnerable, uncertain, human. "Why did you come back tonight, Joy?" The question I'd been dreading. I could lie, make up something about work deadlines or team bonding. Instead, I found myself telling the truth. "I was worried you hadn't eaten." She set down her chopsticks and looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since that afternoon's introduction. "After all these years, you're still..." "Still what?" "Still you." The next few weeks fell into a careful rhythm of avoidance. Emma threw herself into restructuring the department with the same intensity she'd once applied to her studies. I watched from my desk as she transformed our chaotic workspace into something efficient, streamlined. She had a gift for seeing patterns others missed, for finding solutions that seemed obvious only after she'd implemented them. But she barely looked at me. Our interactions became strictly professional. She'd send emails instead of walking over to my desk. When forced to speak in meetings, she addressed the air somewhere to my left. The careful distance felt deliberate, calculated, and it was driving me slowly insane. "She's incredible," Molly whispered during a particularly productive team meeting. "Look at those numbers. We're already ahead of last quarter's projections." I nodded absently, my attention fixed on Emma's hands as she gestured toward the presentation screen. Those same hands that had once helped me through calculus homework, that had braided my hair during late-night cramming sessions, that had gently pushed me away the night I'd confessed everything. "Joy!" Molly's voice snapped me back to reality. "Emma asked you a question." Heat flooded my cheeks. Emma was looking directly at me for the first time in weeks, her expression carefully neutral, but with something sharp lurking underneath. "I asked about the Morrison account timeline," she repeated, her voice crisp and professional. "Right. Yes. The Morrison account." I scrambled through my notes, acutely aware that everyone was watching. "We're on track for Thursday delivery, pending client approval on the final revisions." "Good." She turned back to the screen, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "Let's move on to quarterly projections." After the meeting, I lingered in the conference room, gathering papers I didn't need to gather. Emma was packing up her laptop when I finally worked up the courage to speak. "I'm sorry about that." "The distraction." She paused, her fingers stilling on the laptop case zipper. "We all have off days." "Emma?" "Director Thompson," she corrected quietly but not unkindly. "In the office, please." The formal address felt like a slap, even though I knew she was right. We couldn't be Emma and Joy here. We couldn't be anything here. "Of course. Director Thompson." She nodded once and left, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the same measured cadence as her breathing. I stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by the lingering scent of her perfume and the weight of everything we weren't saying. It was past 10 when I finally admitted I wasn't going home. The Morrison account revisions had taken longer than expected, but that wasn't why I was still here. Emma's office light was on, and I found myself making excuses to walk past her door, getting water from the far fountain, checking the copy machine on the executive floor, anything to catch a glimpse of her bent-over paperwork. On my fourth unnecessary trip, she looked up. "Joy." Not Director Thompson this time. Just my name, said with something that sounded like exhaustion. "What are you still doing here?" I held up a stack of papers. "Morrison revisions. Budget proposals. They're due tomorrow." She rubbed her temples, and I noticed the way her usually perfect hair had come loose from its bun. "What time is it?" "Almost 10:30. She sighed and leaned back in her chair. For a moment, she looked exactly like she had during finals week senior year, brilliant and driven and utterly worn out. "Have you eaten?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Emma gave me a look I couldn't decipher. Joy. There's a good Korean place that delivers late. I could. We can't do this. The words hung between us like a verdict. I knew she was right. We couldn't slip back into old patterns, couldn't pretend the past didn't exist while simultaneously living in it. I know, I said quietly. You look tired. I am tired. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. I should go home. But she didn't move toward the door. Instead, she stood there looking at me with an expression I remembered from college, the same look she'd given me right before everything fell apart. Why did you really come back that night? She asked. With the fish. I could have lied again. Should have lied. Instead, I told her the truth. Because seeing you again made me realize I never really stopped caring about you. Emma closed her eyes as if the words physically hurt. When she opened them again, her professional mask was back in place. This can't happen, Joy. You know that, right? I'm your boss now. Even if... She trailed off, shaking her head. It just can't happen. Even if what? But she was already gathering her things, shutting down her computer with sharp, decisive clicks. Good night, Joy. Don't stay too much longer. She left me standing in her office doorway, her perfume lingering in the air and her unfinished sentence echoing in my mind. Even if what? The phone call happened 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday that had already tested everyone's patience. The Morrison account had exploded spectacularly. Not our fault, but we'd be the ones fixing it. Emma had been in damage control mode all day, fielding angry calls from clients and upper management with the kind of cool composure that made me simultaneously admire and worry about her. I was updating project timelines when my phone rang. Mom's contact photo, her smiling face from last Christmas, filled the screen. Hi, Mom. I can't really talk right now. Joy, sweetheart, I know you're busy, but I have wonderful news. Mrs. Chen's daughter is back from studying abroad, and she's such a lovely girl. Pre-med at Stanford, speaks 3 languages, and she's single. I thought maybe this weekend you could. Mom, please, not now. You're 28, Joy. When are you going to find someone nice and settle down? Mrs. Chen says her daughter is very interested in meeting you. She saw your photo from my birthday party and thought you were beautiful. I glanced around the office, hyper-aware that my voice might carry. Emma's office door was open, and I could see her at her desk, but she appeared focused on her computer screen. I appreciate Mrs. Chen's daughter's interest, but I'm not looking to date anyone right now. That's exactly the problem. You never look. How are you supposed to find love if you don't try? Mrs. Chen says. Mom, I really can't discuss this at work. Fine. But think about it, okay? A nice dinner just to meet someone new. What's the harm? After I hung up, I sat staring at my computer screen without seeing it. The conversation had dredged up all the old feelings. The pressure to be someone I wasn't, to want things I didn't want, to pretend that finding the right man would somehow fix everything wrong with me. Rough call. I looked up to find Emma standing beside my desk. She must have approached while I was lost in thought. Just my mom. I shrugged, not sure how to explain. Still trying to set you up? The question caught me off guard. Emma remembered my mother's matchmaking attempts from college, the awkward double dates I'd endured to keep up appearances. Some things never change. Emma's expression softened almost imperceptibly. No, they don't. For a moment, we looked at each other, without the careful professional distance we'd maintained for weeks. I saw something in her eyes, understanding, maybe, or sympathy. Whatever it was, it made my chest tighten with longing. Emma? But the moment shattered as Molly approached with a stack of urgent documents, and Emma stepped back into her role as director, professional mask sliding back into place. Joy, when you have a moment, could you update the Morrison timeline? We'll need it for the 3 o'clock meeting. Of course, Director Thompson. She nodded and walked away, but I caught her glance back once before disappearing into her office. The look lasted only a second, but it was enough to make me wonder if maybe, just maybe, the careful distance was as difficult for her as it was for me. The 3 o'clock meeting was a disaster. Morrison Industries had decided to pull their account entirely, citing communication issues and unmet expectations. It wasn't our fault. Their original brief had been vague and contradictory, but that didn't matter. We were losing a 6-figure client, and someone needed to take responsibility. Emma handled it with her usual grace, fielding accusations and pointed questions from upper management without flinching. I watched her navigate the political minefield with something approaching awe, even as my own stomach churned with anxiety. We'll conduct a full review of the account management process, she said calmly. I'll have a complete report on your desk by Friday, along with recommendations for preventing similar issues in the future. After the meeting, the conference room emptied quickly. Everyone wanted to distance themselves from the Morrison mess to avoid being associated with the failure. I lingered, gathering papers that didn't need gathering, waiting until Emma and I were alone. That wasn't her fault, I said quietly. She looked up from her laptop, surprised. It doesn't matter whose fault it was. The client is gone. The brief they gave us was impossible. You know that, right? They wanted contradictory things and refused to clarify when we asked for direction. Anyone would have struggled with that account. Emma's fingers stilled on the keyboard. For a moment, I thought she might actually accept the reassurance. Instead, she closed the laptop with a sharp click. I should have managed it better. Should have pushed harder for clarity up front. Should have. She shook her head. It doesn't matter now. Emma. Director Thompson. Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. Just stop pretending we don't know each other. She stood up, her jaw tight. We're at work, Joy. We have to. Have to what? Pretend that you don't remember me? That we weren't roommates for 3 years? That we don't have a history? Yes. Her voice was quiet but firm. That's exactly what we have to do. Why? The question hung in the air between us. Emma looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Frustration, maybe, or something deeper. Because it's complicated. Everything is complicated. That doesn't mean we have to pretend it doesn't exist. What do you want from me, Joy? The professional mask finally cracked, revealing something raw underneath. What exactly are you asking for here? I opened my mouth to answer, then realized I didn't know. What was I asking for? Friendship? Something more? Or just acknowledgement that we'd meant something to each other once upon a time? I don't know, I admitted. I can't keep pretending you're a stranger. Emma closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, some of the fight had gone out of her. I'm not pretending you're a stranger. I'm trying to protect both of us. From what? She didn't answer. Instead, she gathered her things and headed for the door. Emma, wait. I need some air. Can you handle the Morrison timeline review? I'll look at it tomorrow morning. She left before I could respond, leaving me alone in the conference room with the lingering scent of her perfume and more questions than answers. I stayed late again that night, not because of work, but because I couldn't face going home to an empty apartment and my own churning thoughts. The Morrison timeline review was finished, but I found other tasks to occupy my time. Organizing files that didn't need organizing, updating spreadsheets that were already current. Around 9:30, I heard the elevator ding. Emma's heels clicked against the marble floor as she walked past my cubicle toward her office. She didn't look at me, but I caught the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself too carefully upright. An hour passed before I worked up the courage to knock on her office door. Come in. Emma looked up from her computer, and I was struck by how tired she looked. Not just physically tired, but emotionally drained in a way that reminded me of college finals week. I finished the Morrison review, I said, placing the folder on her desk. And I organized the client feedback from the past quarter. Thought it might help with the report you're writing. She opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. This is thorough. Thank you. I should have left then. Should have said goodnight and gone home. Instead, I found myself sitting in the chair across from her desk. You missed dinner again. Emma looked up, a slight frown creasing her brow. Joy. I'm not offering to bring you food. I'm just observing. That earned me a small smile, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Observing. It's what friends do. Notice things. The word friends hung in the air between us. Emma's smile faded, replaced by something more complicated. Is that what we are? Friends. The question was loaded with years of history, with everything we'd been to each other and everything we'd lost. I thought about lying, about keeping things simple and safe. I don't know what we are, I said instead. But I know I care about whether you eat dinner. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming silently against her desk. There's a Thai place down the street that stays open late, she said finally. I know the one. They have good pad thai. They do. Another silence, heavy with possibility. I suppose if you were hungry too, we could order something. For practical reasons. Since we're both working late. My heart did something complicated in my chest. Practical reasons. Strictly professional. Colleagues sharing a meal during overtime hours. Of course. But when our eyes met across her desk, There was nothing professional about the look that passed between us. For just a moment, we weren't Director Thompson and her subordinate. We were Emma and Joy, two people who'd once shared everything and were slowly, carefully, finding their way back to something that resembled friendship. Or maybe something more. The Thai food arrived an hour later, filling Emma's office with the scent of lemongrass and chili. We ate in comfortable silence, the tension of recent weeks easing into something that felt almost normal. Almost like the old days. "Do you remember," Emma said suddenly, "that night junior year when we ordered Chinese food and tried to teach ourselves calculus?"
I nearly choked on my pad thai.
"You mean the night you had a complete breakdown over derivatives?" "I did not have a breakdown. Emma, you cried into lo mein for 20 minutes. She laughed. Actually laughed. And the sound made my chest tight with memory and longing. I was stressed. Professor Martinez was impossible, and I needed that A to keep my scholarship. You were brilliant. You always figured it out eventually. Not without help." She looked at me with something that might have been gratitude. "You were patient with me, even when I was impossible." "You were never impossible. Liar." But she said it fondly, the way she used to when we'd stay up too late talking about everything and nothing. We fell back into silence, but it was different now, warmer, more familiar. Emma had loosened her hair from its bun, and in the soft light of her desk lamp, she looked younger, more like the girl I'd known. "Joy," she said after a while, her voice careful. That night you told me how you felt. About me." My stomach clenched. "Emma, you don't have to. I need to say this." She set down her chopsticks and looked at me directly. I didn't handle it well. "You were honest. You told me you were straight."
There's nothing wrong with that.
"That's just it." Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. I wasn't being entirely honest. The world seemed to stop. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, could feel the weight of her words settling between us like a stone dropped in still water. "What do you mean?" Emma closed her eyes, as if the next words were physically painful to say. "I mean, I was terrified of what I was feeling, of what it would mean if I admitted that maybe I wasn't as straight as I thought I was." The air in the office felt thin, insufficient. I struggled to process what she was saying, to understand the implications. "Emma, I told myself I was protecting our friendship, that if I just pretended I didn't feel anything, we could go back to normal. But I was really protecting myself from having to question everything I thought I knew about who I was." She opened her eyes and looked at me with an expression so raw it made my chest ache. "I was a coward, and I hurt you because of it." I sat in stunned silence, my mind reeling. All these years, I'd carried the weight of that rejection, had convinced myself that I'd misread every signal, every moment of closeness. But if Emma was saying what I thought she was saying, why are you telling me this now? Because seeing you again, it brought everything back. All the feelings I tried so hard to bury. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you want to know the real reason I took this job? When I saw your name on the employee roster, I told myself it was fate giving me a chance to make things right. And now I think fate has a cruel sense of humor." The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths and missed opportunities. I thought about everything that had led us to this moment: college heartbreak, years of separation, the careful dance we'd been doing since she'd arrived. "It doesn't have to be cruel," I said quietly. Emma looked at me sharply. "Joy, I'm your boss. Even if we both wanted whatever this is, it would be complicated. Impossible, really." "Since when do you back down from complicated?" She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on her desk. "Since I realized I could lose you again. Properly this time." The vulnerability in her voice broke something open in my chest. I reached across the desk and covered her hand with mine. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. "You're not going to lose me," I said. "Not again." Emma looked down at our joined hands, her breath catching slightly. "What are we doing, Joy?" "I don't know. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to have all the answers right now." She lifted her eyes to meet mine, and I saw something there I'd only dreamed of seeing all those years ago. Want, uncertainty, and something that looked like hope. "This is complicated. Everything worthwhile is complicated." Emma smiled then, soft and real, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe properly. "So, what happens now?" "Now," I said, squeezing her hand gently, "we figure it out. Together." The next morning arrived gray and uncertain, Seattle weather matching my mood as I sat in my car outside the office building. Last night felt like a dream. Emma's confessions, the weight of her hand in mine, the way she'd looked at me when I'd finally said goodnight. But morning brought reality crashing back. The office hierarchy, the professional boundaries we'd crossed, the complexity of whatever was happening between us. I found Emma already at her desk when I arrived, perfectly put together as always. She looked up when I passed her office, our eyes meeting for just a moment before she looked away. The careful distance was back, but there was something different now, an awareness that thrummed between us like a live wire. The day passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines. We maintained professional facades, but I caught Emma watching me during the morning briefing, felt the weight of her attention when I presented the Morrison post-mortem analysis. Every interaction felt charged, loaded with everything we'd said and hadn't said. Around lunchtime, I found a note on my desk in Emma's precise handwriting. Roof access, 1 p.m.
If you want to.
The roof of our building was technically off-limits, but the door had been broken for months and nobody bothered to fix it. I climbed the stairs with my heart hammering, not sure what I'd find. Emma was standing at the edge of the roof, looking out over the Seattle skyline. The wind had pulled a few strands loose from her usually perfect hair, and she looked more human than I'd seen her since she'd arrived. "I used to come up here in college sometimes," she said without turning around, "when I needed to think." I joined her at the railing, careful to maintain some distance. "Think about what?" "You, mostly." The admission hung in the air between us. I studied her profile, the slight furrow between her brows, the way she bit her lower lip when she was nervous. "Emma, I know this is impossible," she said quickly. "I know all the reasons why we can't, why this won't work. I'm your boss. There are policies, professional boundaries. If anyone found out what exactly?" She turned to look at me then, her eyes bright with something that looked like fear. "That I'm in love with you.
Still.
Again. I don't know which." The words hit me like a physical force. After years of wondering, of second-guessing every memory from college, here was Emma telling me everything I dreamed of hearing. "Emma, I know it's not fair. I know I don't have the right to say this, after what I put you through. But seeing you again, working with you, I can't pretend anymore. I can't keep acting like you don't matter to me, when you're all I think about." I stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. I don't know how we'll make it work, but I want to try. If you still?" I silenced her with a kiss, soft, careful, years in the making. Emma's breath caught against my lips, her hands finding my face, as if she needed to convince herself I was real. When we broke apart, she was crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For college, for hurting you, for taking so long to figure this out." "We figured it out," I said, brushing tears from her cheeks. "That's what matters." Emma smiled through her tears, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "So what now?" I thought about it, the complications ahead, the careful navigation we'd need to do, the risk we were taking. "Now we figure out how to be us, whatever that means. Together? Together." Emma kissed me again, and this time it tasted like possibility, like second chances, like all the words we'd left unsaid finally finding their way home. Below us, the city hummed with life, but up here on the roof, it was just Emma and me and the future stretching out ahead of us, complicated and uncertain and perfect.